Mathieu Blanchard, welcome to the Freetrail podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Dylan.
And you are back in Montreal. How have the past 3 weeks been since your podium performance at UTMB, your second podium performance at UTMB?
I didn't run that much for 3 weeks. I drank a lot of beer with my friend Marianne, and we spent a good time in the in the forest. And we didn't run that much actually.
Good. Physically, are you feeling like you're recovering okay?
Yeah, physically I feel very good as usual after this kind of races. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the race, I feel very good physically and I'm able to run again. But this year, I'm not very rested mentally. And this is the first year that I don't have another race in the fall and winter. So without target and without goal, I really don't want to train hard now. So physically, I'm good, but mentally, I still need a rest to be back on the trail.
Yeah. I imagine it's difficult after running one of the best 100-mile performances in the sport's history that I can remember. Certainly one of the best performances in UTMB history, that there's maybe some temptation to keep that momentum going. Have you felt any of that pressure since you finished UTMB?
Yeah, for sure. I received so many propositions to run other races this fall. And you know what? At the beginning, before UTMB, I planned to run Diagonal des Fous in Réunion Island. I booked my plane for the whole months in August, from 1st of October to the end. And I finally decided to keep this momentum, to continue to understand what happened at UTMB and what I can do with this, with my partner and everything. And I thought it was a better idea to don't run Diagonal des Fous this year, even if physically I feel good, because I still need to understand it to keep this momentum. And maybe I should keep Diagonal des Fous for another year, but I will go there and I will see what is the race, what is the ambience, and what is the trail maybe for another year.
So you'll still travel to Reunion Island, but you won't want to run the Grand Raid?
Yeah, wow. For sure. I just transfer my registration to the Zambrocal, which is a relay on the Diagonal des Fous trail with 4 friends, and we will run maybe 30 to 40K. So it's easier and it's not a performance target.
So good. Well, we don't need to talk about it, but I went and did the Grand Raid last year, and it's such a fantastic event. And I think you're wise to go and feel it out one time before you go and actually do the full Grand Raid. I wish that's how I would have approached it. But anyway, I got to finish. And now next time that I go over, I'll be well educated as to how to perform better there. But going back in time, I know you're French born, but you've lived in Montreal for a while. Do you still live in Montreal full time, or have you moved back over to mainland France?
Yeah, I still live in Montreal, but now I think I live between France and Canada. It's a long story, but in 2019, I made a hard decision in my life, a hard choice. I was 30 years old, and I decided to stop my engineering career because it was very stressful job, and the calendar and the organization of this job from Monday to Friday from 9 to 5 was not the best for me if I wanted to improve my level. So since 2019, I moved from France to Canada, and I try to spend more time around the races. So it's difficult when people ask me, where do you live, Matt? I don't know, actually. It depends my calendar, my races, and where I want to train for a special goal.
So as I was just saying to you, of course, we have listeners all over the world, but the majority of our audience is American-based, North American-based. And I'd love to do a little bit more of a deeper dive to understand a little bit more about you. Of course, you have been a strong contender on the circuit for at least 5-8 years now, but in the last 2 or 3, you've taken a level up. And I think for that reason, your name is new to a lot of people, especially probably new to a lot of people who are listening to the podcast. So Maybe you just give us a brief description of how you ended up where you are, having grown up in France, what your history is with sport and how you ended up falling into trail running.
Yeah. My adventure in endurance sports is actually quite recent. I put on my first running shoes back in 2014 when I moved to Canada. I was 26 years old, so pretty old to start running. Before, I grew up and lived in the south of France, and in my childhood, I was more attracted by extreme sports like skateboard, snowboard, BMX, and mountain bike. And my parents loved scuba diving, and I spent a lot of time in the ocean and in front of the ocean, and I became a scuba diving instructor around 20 years old. And being close to the sea, I also practice a lot of sailing sports like kite surfing, and I continue to do it because I love it. I studied engineering in Grenoble. Grenoble, it's a city in the middle of the Alps. And there I practiced a lot of snowboarding for sure. And during my studies and maybe my beginning as an engineer, I really liked to party a lot with my friends. And I think I was a bit extreme in these parties. And I think that's also why I started running actually when I moved to Canada. I felt so unhealthy. And I had to get back my health when I moved to Canada in Montreal. And this is why I started to run. It's pretty banal, but this is the way I did it. And my first 3 years as a runner, I only did road running. I didn't even know that trail running sport existed. So, but yeah, already from the beginning, I saw running more as an experience rather than mainly performance. And this is something that stayed in me forever. That's why I had fun running all the most beautiful marathons around Montreal in Eastern North America. So I ran the Montreal Marathon, which was my first race ever and my first marathon, maybe 6 months after I started running. Then I went to Ottawa, to Toronto, Chicago, Boston, New York City, and it was really cool. And in 2016, so 3 years after I started running, I was 29 years old. And a friend of me advised me to try trail running. And I was like, what is this sport? Running in mountain? It's weird. So I was like, okay, I will try it. And I really liked the experience. And the first one was a 20K. It was really hard for me. And I sprained my ankle at the first test. But yeah, at the end of 2016, I did my first ultra. So the same year. It was an 80K in Quebec, which is Ultra Trail Arikana.
Yep. It just happened. I think was it last weekend?
Yeah, exactly. Last week. So
I've wanted to do that race for a while.
Yeah, it's. I think it's the best in Quebec if you want to feel the energy of trail running here.
Yeah, I was texting with our mutual friend Nico, and he said that that's where you sort of made your trail running debut, and that you've sort of been off to the races ever since.
All the community there and everybody go for this race. Even if you don't run, you are there to enjoy the party.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I loved the experience. The experience so much. This first ultra trail at the end of 2016 that I said to myself, I no longer wanted to race on the road. And I started ultra trail. Actually, I started ultra trail the year after, so in 2017. Because when I got home in winter in Quebec, it's difficult to run. So I started watching all the videos about trail running, and I started to read all the books I could find. And I was.
It's remarkable. I mean, from 2017 to where you are today as a 2-time UTMB podium finisher.
Yeah, I worked a lot, and I will explain all the story then. But it's pretty fast for sure. It's pretty fast for sure when I go on the podium at UTMB. When the speakers say, "Okay, François Den or Kilian Jornet, who won UTMB 20 years ago or 15 years ago?" I'm like, okay, I just started running 5 years ago. It's weird. But it was fast. And I think that's
Yeah. Well, thank you for just thanks for the introduction and the background. I'm sure people will get a kick out of it. I definitely identify with your description of maybe paying a little bit too much attention or spending too much time in the bars and not enough time working on your physical health in your mid-20s. And that's part of my story of my entrance to the sport as well. So I feel that we're kindred spirits in that way, but also listening to hearing you talking about your history with sport. I mean, it's kind of evident that you're a generalist, that you have exposure to a lot of different sporting disciplines, both in the water and on land. I know you do some cycling and stuff too. I'm wondering if there's any specific things from your sporting background, which is so diverse and varied, that you think has, with some perspective, looking back, contributed to how successful you've been as a trail and mountain runner?
It's a good question. I think it's very different, the extreme sports with running. And you know what? When I started to run, I wasn't proud of it, and I didn't tell anything to my family and my friends, because I thought that they will laugh on me. And because I went from this kind of sport with adrenaline and very, you know what, and it took me maybe 1 year to tell my families and friends that that I became a runner. But I think it's all about the passion of the movement and the sports. When I was doing this kind of sport, I was looking to the adrenaline and all the sensation you can get in running and in endurance sport. I discovered that you can go to look for the emotion, which are more deep, and you feel alive, and you meet people, and it's all about all this specific sensation that you are looking for. This is why I love the running, and this is the kind of connection I can do with these sports. And there is another thing that is very interesting. I never did running before, because I was like, running is stupid. There is nothing smart with it, and you don't have to use your brain when you run. It's just very stupid. And I love the scuba diving, for example, because it's very, very, very technical. And as an engineer and with my brain, I love to use my brain when I practice sports. And with scuba diving, you have to read a lot of books. You have to learn the theory and everything. And this is what I discovered in running, and this is what I loved when I discovered that running and endurance sports are very technical, actually.
Yeah.
And you have to read a lot, you have to learn a lot, and it's very, very, very technical. And the first day I discovered it, and when I went to buy a book, I saw that the book of running were bigger than the book of scuba diving, and I was like, wow, it's crazy. You have to learn about the nutrition, the recovery, sleep, progression, training plan, and everything. And I was like, okay, this is a new puzzle, and I will have to work on it if I want to improve my level as fast as possible, because I start running very late in my life, and I have to improve my level fast if I want to run with the best in the world. So this is how everything started.
That's so interesting. So you brought the engineering, problem-solving brain to endurance sport. Now it all makes sense as to how you've ended up where you are.
Yeah.
Really quick before we move on, I'd love to talk more about diving, because I think that maybe this is a parallel to your success as a mountain sport, endurance sport athlete. I'm wondering if there's anything you want to share between the balance between the ocean versus the mountain, and like, is your time in the water, does that help give you some different energy or different appreciation for your time in the mountains?
Yeah, you use the best word for it. It's the balance. The balance. Yeah, first, in the ocean, underwater, there is another world. Actually, it's huge, the size of this world, and there is a community with the smaller fish to the bigger and everything, and it's very interesting to explore it. Then I discovered as an instructor that I love the pedagogy and to show people this environment, and the people who arrive for the first time in the ocean and are like, oh, I'm very scared, I will be bitten by the sharks and it's dangerous and I will die and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, come with me and I will show you how beautiful this world. And when they get out the water, when they are like, wow, it was beautiful, I just want to continue. And maybe I want to protect this ocean because it's so nice. So this is something I love. And when you train as an athlete, it's very hard. It's painful sometimes. When you run down, it's it's painful. And when you go underwater, everything it's calm. You go there slower. You don't speak. You don't choose the body language, and everything is different. You can go in 3 dimensions, going up, down, left, right. And these sensations are very good for the mental, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when everything is going too hard for me, and when I got too much pressure with the races that coming and the partners and everything, I'm like, okay, I'm leaving for 1 week or maybe 1 weekend, and I will just go to dive. And it's something that is very good for the mental to do a reset. Actually, it's like doing meditation, but 10 times more stronger than the classical meditation when you stay on the ground and thinking and about your breathing. So yeah, it's something that I still using today to balance my life and to let the stress and everything drop during special time.
Yeah, I had Claire Gallagher on the podcast earlier this year, who is recently sort of getting into diving herself, and she echoed a similar sentiment and how calm it is to be underwater. And when you're doing so much impact sport and training and constantly thinking about your performance, that when you go underwater, everything has a calm and sort of quiet nature to it that helps you to
and when we speak about performance, there is something that I use from scuba diving and apnea and free diving as well, is the breathing. When you breathe, when you run, when you breathe, it's like you don't actually. Usually, most of the runners don't control it. They are like running and don't think about it. But for me, as I train as a scuba diver to save my air, and I train as a free diver to keep my air underwater without breathing, I know control almost every time when I train and when I race my breathing, and it's very interesting, I think, as a performance. Yeah.
Talk more about that. That's fascinating. So what you're saying is that one of the things that diving has brought into your run training is that you control your breathing a little bit better while you're on the race course or in your training. Can you give an example of that? Like during your intervals or in your long runs, are you consciously checking in on your respiration?
Yeah. When you get out of breath, it's like a bad cycle. You can't control it because you inhale more than you exhale. So it's like a bad cycle, and you get out of breath. And if you are able to control your breathing, like you exhale more than you inhale, you can control it, and for sure you will bring more oxygen to your body and to your muscle and to your brain. And it's easier than for the performance, but it's not easy to do it. It's easy to speak about it, but you have to work on it and to do some special exercises. And when you are able to control your breath, it's crazy how deep you can go in the efforts.
Wow, that's so interesting.
It's one of my secrets. I can't say everything tonight.
Yeah, well, now I'm going to go practice on my next run tomorrow. I'm going to go out there and consciously pay attention to my breathing.
And there is something else, Dylan. When you train as a free diver and apnea, you become more efficient on how you use the oxygen with your body.
Really?
And so when you are more efficient with oxygen,
need to be divers, it sounds like.
Yeah, sure, for sure.
At least coming up there to Montreal.
Camp. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do a camp. We'll put together a Mathieu Blanchard Freetrail diving camp. How does that sound? That would be amazing. So cool. So I want to obviously start talking about your sort of run training and your career, but I think one of the other things that's fascinating about you, is it like, I don't know, it seems like the last few years have probably been somewhat surreal in the greater context of your life. You had the pandemic, and then of course your running career is absolutely taken off, and simultaneously you sort of became a reality TV star. You were doing kind of the Survivor, the equivalent of Survivor for, I think, a French television station. Talk about that really quick. What was that all about?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think that you just tell it. It was about pandemic and some stuff that happened in my life, but maybe I should have performed before 2021. But yeah, actually, it all started in 2017. I think you spoke about it with my friend Marianne, but it's when Salomon selected me for their academy in Moab in the US. It was in March 2017, and I felt super lucky to be in this camp, and I gave everything during this. And at the end, they took me and Marianne to continue the adventure with Salomon, and this is where everything has started. So in 2018, I continued to run just around my place, and in local races, I did good results, but it was not in the international scene. And in 2019, so only 1 year after this, in January, I decided to quit my engineering job, to put running in the middle of my life, and to give me all the chances to improve my level. But this is where everything started to go really bad, and I will tell you the story. So only 1 month after I left my office, I seriously injured myself, and it had never happened to me, and it was the first time, but it was a stress fracture in the sacrum. So it was really bad, and I stayed almost 3 months in my sofa doing nothing. And I get a little bit depressed because, my family and my friend were like, okay, Matt, because in France we are a little bit less open-minded than in Canada and in North America, but they were like, okay, Matt, if you stop your engineering job, you will become a vagabond. You will don't have money. You will don't have money anymore, and it's very secure to be an engineer. You can't stop, blah blah blah. So I was like, you will see. I feel it in my stomach, in my heart. I need to stop. And only 1 month after, I injured myself. So they were like, you see, we told you, blah blah blah. And so I was really depressed at this time. So. Yes, during the summer, I started to train hard for Diagonale des Fous the first time in 2019. And I ran to Réunion Island 3 weeks before the race. I continued to train hard and to see the trails. And 3 days before the race, actually, it was my only chance in 2019 to show that I train hard and I'm good in this sport. But the TV show you mentioned, that Survivor, which is Koh-Lanta in France, called me and tell me, Matt, you have to take the plane tomorrow because we go in the Fiji Island in the middle of Pacific to do it. And I was like, no, it's impossible. I have my race in 3 days, my only race in the year, and I get injured and blah blah blah. And they were like, no, you don't have the choice. You have to take the plane tomorrow. So I left the Réunion Island and to do it. So the rest of the story. I was like, okay, it's good, Matt. You will catch up in 2020, and the rest of the story. Global pandemic, boom, everything that was cancelled. And there, I said to myself, no way, Matt. A second year in a row without trail running races internationally, it's impossible. It's impossible. And when, I did. When I did everything in my life to progress and optimize my potential and put running in the center of my life, it was a very difficult time for me. But I still finally had a great year in 2020 because I carrying out other personal project like adventure, and I ran the 650K adventure on the only GR in North America, and after that it was a kind of FKT. We did a movie that went on the biggest festival like BEM Festival. We sold more than 20,000 renting on Vimeo, and it was a great success. So
I just rented it. I can't wait to watch
perfect.
it. Yeah.
It's in French, but you have the subtitle. But this is something I did, and I think it was a good year for me actually, because it was the first year in 2020 that I started to train differently. Because when you go to run 650K, you can train then the same that when you train for 100 miles. I mean, I started to bike, I started to swim, and I think I improved my level in 2020. And this is why in 2021 at the UTMB, I was already ready to do my podium. So yes, finally 2021 arrived, and I told to myself, Matt, finally this is the year when you will be able to show how passionate you are and how hard you worked this last year. And that's how I presented myself to the 2021 UTMB. A bit with this imposter syndrome, because when I arrived at the starting line, all the elite athletes and the pro athletes were looking at me like,
nobody was talking about you as a potential.
Who is this guy? Who is this guy? So I was a bit stressful, but with a lot of hours of work in my legs, I was still a bit confident to do a good race. And then finally 2022 arrived, and the rest of the story.
Well, I want to talk about last year's UTMB briefly, but maybe before we get to that, because you've just mentioned it, that obviously leaving your engineering job and putting running at the center of your life was a bit of a risk. Your friends and family were maybe dissuading you from taking that risk. Now, looking back with some perspective, you probably feel some vindication for that decision. Have you had further conversations with your friends and family to sort of, I don't know, think about that decision and this new path that it sent you on in your life?
Yeah, we discussed a lot about this decision later on. And at this time I lived in Canada, in North America, and people are really more open-minded in this kind of specific choices in their job. I saw so much people around me in Quebec that went from, I don't know, a lawyer career and then they went to an artist career, and it's wealthy here, and people encourage you to do it. So yeah, later on when my family saw me I think they saw me for the first time kind of fulfillment in me. Because all my life when I studied engineering, and even before, I never loved engineering actually, and never loved doing physics and mathematics in my studies. It was just the people who give me the orientation, who told me, Matt, you are good in mathematics and physics, so you have to go in this engineering job. And they never asked me the question, what is your passion to you? What do you like to do? And at this time, if they had asked me this, I was like, okay, I love to be outside. I love to do sports, and I love to blah, blah, blah. And they never seen me very happy and with this fulfillment when I was an engineer. And now, after a few years, I'm like smiling every day. I wake up every morning very early to train because I love it. And my family now travel with me in the races. They come every year at UTMB. They help me with the assistance, and they are crying with me. I never saw my father and my mother crying in my life. Never. And now in these races, when we are in the aid station or at the finish line, we all cry all together, and the emotion are so strong. And this is why I can tell myself that now they are happy with the choice I did a few years ago.
What a beautiful description. That is so great. Thanks for that. So let's talk about last year's UTMB briefly. I don't know if you remember this, but not long after you finished the race, I was also leaving the Majestic Hotel where I was doing the English commentary, and we bumped into each other. And I just said, man, congratulations. What an awesome third place performance. And you said, I can't believe it. I was hoping that I would get top 15 or top 20. I would have expected to be on the podium. So just reflect on that for a little bit. In what ways did that breakthrough maybe change the way that you viewed yourself in the greater trail running ecosystem? And what ways did it change the way you viewed your own capabilities?
Yeah, it was really hard for me to assess my level at this time, because since 2019 with the injury and then the pandemic, I didn't race that much like everybody, but I trained so much that I didn't know how to place myself in the middle of all this runner and in the middle of the time I can target on UTMB, and it was very, very, very difficult for me. But in 2000, this year, last year actually, yeah, it was the first time I spent almost the whole year in France in the mountains. And before I used to live mainly in Montreal, and it's pretty flat, and it was a different training for me because I stayed in France because yes, with the COVID, it was very difficult to go back in Canada with the restriction and the 14 days locked in my apartment, the quarantine and everything. So yeah, I knew after spending several months training in the mountain that eventually my legs and I was in a great shape for this race. So I wanted to do it for the first time. I wanted to do it smart with my brain and with a special strategy, because before I never had a strategy and I went all the way in front without thinking about it. So this is why the week before the race, I asked the manager of the international Salomon team, Greg Volley, for advices. And it was the first time I asked for advice. And he told me, Matt, don't do you as usual. Don't start strong in the front, and you know how it goes or it breaks, and it's not very smart actually. So this time he suggests me to stay behind the elite pack and to control from behind with very precise time at each aid station. And I followed the plan, and it led me to the best result of my life at this time. But as I told you, when we met after the race, it was unbelievable for me because I had no clue and no time to target, and it was really very blurry for me. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a great result. And I think you were maybe the biggest surprise of the day. Like I said earlier, nobody was really expecting you to contend for a podium position. And now you've got a second podium finish to your name. And now you'll never go back to any race without people in the media or your fellow competitors respecting and recognizing you as a contender in the field. Speaking about your training, I'm wondering, with your diverse athletic skills and background, diving, running, cycling, I saw on your Instagram, and you mentioned earlier that you were doing some kiteboarding too. In what ways do you view your general, dynamic ability to approach various sports with, like, how do you credit that with the success that you've had as a runner? Like, is there anything that you have learned about just coming into new sports that like makes you a well-rounded athlete across the board?
Yeah, I think it's a way to see the sports. As I said before, I don't look only on the main thing in the middle, which is training for running, and which is practicing in other sports. I love to see all the parameters and all the cursor you can use to improve, and there are so many on which you can work on, and I love that actually. I love that. I love to read books and to test a lot, and I think that today I have developed specific protocols in each main topics. For example, in nutrition aspect, it's all about how I will get as many calories as possible in me without having gastric issues and without feeling nauseous. So this is the problem I want to solve, and I need to learn about it, and I need to read about it. And not only in running, I learn in the space, the astronauts, and how they eat and how they do it with the special food, because they can cook there as us. We can cook when you run, and I try to learn in other sports and in other area how to do it. And for the training session as well, I have developed specific training that I have never seen in books or that I never seen with in other athletes, and and I developed secret recipes that I keep and I improve, and it's mainly around the management of the intensity on efforts of more than 10 hours. You can be steady as the intensity, and what I see usually is to go by feeling, but there is more than feeling, and you can try to find the best intensity for effort that are more for 10 hours. Sometimes you have to push, but why you have to push in the uphill or downhill or on the flats, and how you push, So this is something I had tried to develop and to place myself in different zones to improve and to adapt to the race. And each race has specific intensity you have to work on. And now I think I know what I have to do with UTMB. I resolved the problem with UTMB, and I have specific training as well for the uphill and also for the downhill that I never seen in the books and in other athletes. And I have also particular sequences between running and cycling in the same day, So this is very passionate for me. And I have developed as well a kind of protocol to maximize my sleep. And in short, I'm passionate.
But you're an engineer. Yeah. You're an engineer.
Yeah, but it's on me. It's on me. This is what I love. When I was an engineer, I was developing a thermal plant. I was developing some equipment for plane, and but now it's on me, and it's to optimize my potential. And this is what I love, because I can try on me, and I see if it works or not. And every day I learn new things, and every day I feel better than the day before. So it's just a race I love to do in my life.
Do you have a coach, or do you take all this experimentation on your own?
No, it's on my own. I never had a coach, but I'm a coach. I transfer my knowledge to some people sometimes.
Amazing. And you've now kind of developed your own methodology, your own philosophy, and your own training.
Yeah. I want to keep experiencing and learning and confirming and keeping this little garden a bit secret. But for sure, one day I will share it in a book or sometime when I will be sure about what I'm doing. But I'm not sure if it's good or not.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about your season quickly. Your sort of two marquee tune-up races before UTMB were the Madeira Island Ultra back in April, and then Lavaredo in June. You finished, I think it was 4th and 5th in those two races. You did a couple other shorter races over in Europe as well. Talk about your racing season and in what way it played into the greater preparation for UTMB.
Yeah, for the first time, it was a special year for me, because usually I was like, okay, I go with, I don't know if you can say that, but with hurt choices. I mean, I received some opportunities to race somewhere on an island in the world, and I was like, okay, they invite me, so I will go there. But without thinking about something logical in my season to be at my best at UTMB. But this year, last winter, I went to see my manager, Greg Volley, and I told him, okay, Greg, I want to put UTMB as my main goal of the year. How I can go there, preparing myself the best to be the best this day. And he told me, okay, this year, Matt, if you want to be to train well and to have the good races before, you have to do. It's all about experience. I didn't know that, but he proposed me some plan, and I follow it. So yeah, he proposed me first the Madeira Island to work on very steep uphill and downhill, but it was just after my winter in Canada. Yeah. I think I started running in March, because I didn't run that much during winter. I mainly skis and just doing nothing. So when I arrived in Madeira in April, only 1 month after I started to train, for sure I was not in my best shape, but yeah, I did my best, and I was happy with the results without a big training. I just finished behind Jim Wamsley and Thibaut Garivier, and so yeah, it was good for me. And then Lavaredo was chosen because Lavaredo is kind of similar with UTMB. I mean, with the kind of the trails and the steepness of the uphill and downhill, so it was perfect. But I sprained my ankle 3 weeks before the race. I tore my ligament grade 2, so it was pretty bad. So I went there. I taped my ankle, but again, I was not in my best shape. But I was good with that because it was just for me a preparation for UTMB. So I didn't care about the results and everything. But I still managed to finish top 5, and I was good with this. And then, yeah, I trained a lot in the summer. I spent time in the mountain, in altitude, in the Alps, and I think it was the best things to prepare UTMB. And I arrived pretty confident to the UTMB, and it worked. It worked. I think I arrived in my best shape at UTMB.
That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at. Is like,
Yeah.
you know, you had solid performances at Madeira and Lavaredo, but you left your best performance for when it mattered most. And I think that's something that's really difficult for professional athletes to get right. With some perspective, is there anything that you think you did really well that made that the case? I know you did a recon lap around Mont Blanc. Anything aside from that?
Yeah.
That left you feeling like you were ready to have your best day when it mattered most?
Yeah, 3 things. The first things is spending time in the mountain in similar environment than UTMB with the altitude and the trail and everything. The second thing is to see to do the loop before UTMB, exactly 1 month before UTMB in 4 days. It's perfect for visualization, and visualization brings you so much before the race. How you will eat, how you will hit, where you will you will use your pulse, and what times it takes from this place to this place, and how many calories you have. So there is so many things you can learn with the visualization, and you have to do it like doing the loop before. And the third things, it's pretty fun because I'm just discovering now when I look back, I got sick the first 15 days of July, like really sick. It was not a COVID, but kind of similar. I spent 15 days in my bed, like very sick. And I remember telling to my girlfriend, okay, for sure, I will not run UTMB because it's impossible now. I missed all my trainings and I will arrive not ready for UTMB. But I think it's one of the best things that happened to me, because when I see the training program that I built for myself, I'm not sure, but again, it's something I experiment. I think that if I have did all my training plan, so I train a lot early July. For sure, I arrived at UTMB too tired. So I think it's a good thing that I got sick the first 15 days of July to be more with less fatigue at UTMB. And it's a new thing that I learned, that maybe 2 months before a big objective, it's a good thing to stop, really to do a big stop, not a short taper of 3 days between 2 blocks, but a big stop of 1 week or 10 days, but a stop that you choose, and not a stop that is brings by a sickness, you know. So this is the third thing I wanted to say, and this is something that I learned and that maybe I will use again in the next season.
Yeah, and it probably helped you to recover from Lavaredo a bit more quickly, because it sounds like you probably got sick very soon after that race. Wow.
There is the physiology, you have to be the best, the physical aptitude, but there is the fatigue as well. This is the two curve you have to play with, and it's good to arrive at the best, at your best physically, but if you are very tired, the fatigue, your nervous system won't be able to use your best body, you see?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very, very interesting. So I just had Katie Scheid on the podcast, and I want to ask you the same question that I asked her. And that is that, you know, as you mature as a professional athlete, you start to develop an intuition about your performances before they happen. And so I'm curious if you arrived in Chamonix this year feeling like you were ready to have the best race of your career and one of the best 100-mile performances ever. Like, did you have sort of a subtle calm knowing that you were on the precipice of one of the best races of your life?
It was kind of similar with last year. Actually, I was confident because I felt good the week before UTMB, physically and mentally. And I felt better physically and mentally than last year. So this is why when the media asked me, what are your target and your objective? And I was like, last year I did 21 and 15 minutes, 21 hours and 15 minutes, approximately 12 minutes. So this year I will go for 21 hours. And if it's going well, I will try to run under 21. So this is the best I will try to do. And this is the strategy I prepare for it. And I just took some times everywhere on the way in my strategy. But I never thought that this will happen. And you know what? Before the race, again, it's difficult for me to build my confidence because you told about the contender before, but you know what? Before the race, I was not invited by the UTMB for the contender show. You know, they present the top 10 guys, the top 10 contenders guys, and the top 10 women, and I wasn't invited to it. So I was like, okay, I'm still nobody in this sport, but it's normal. I'm okay with that because I'm passionate about sport. I'm watching on TV the Olympics, and usually I saw someone who arrived, he get the golden medal, and then you never see him again. It's because he trained too hard, too fast the 4 year before the Olympics, and he destroyed himself physically and mentally, and you never see him again. So I think it's normal in sport that you have to confirm. And I was okay with that. Okay, they don't invite me as a contender for the top 10, but it's because I have to confirm, and this is the way you have to take if you want to have a long career in sport. And I was okay with that. But at the start line, I was like, okay, Matt, this time you have to confirm, and this is your job and your target today, and you can't miss it, because if next year or another year you have to be invited as a contender, you have to confirm, and it's normal. So yeah, this is how I felt on the start line.
Well, it's always good to have that extra motivation, not being recognized as a returning podium finisher. They were probably going.
And you know another anecdote, Dylan. I arrived at the front of the start line like last year, you know, because I had the elite bib. But when I arrived, they told me, okay, no, you can go this way this time, because this year when you have a bib after I think 40, the number, and I was don't remember 41, 42, 43. You have to go from behind, and I was like. From behind, you mean with the big crowd and everything? And the guy told me, no, just there is a short pass in the middle of the two buildings where you can go. And I was like, okay, another reason I have to confirm. I'm like, okay, I can go in front. I can't go in front.
You ended up on the front of the start line.
Yeah, because when I arrived on this second wave of elites, everybody knows me, the French guy who organized UTMB, and they told me, okay, Matt, if you want, you can go on the first line. And I was like, okay, I will go there, because I know how UTMB start, and this is another thing I want to manage. It starts very strong, and you can fall down, and you can get injured in the first few meters. So I was like, okay, it's better to go in the front, because you can manage your start as you want, and you won't be you won't fall down.
Yeah. And when Marianne Hogan was on the podcast, she relayed a great story about how you insisted that she come to the front of the line with you. So that's great.
We always see men on the front. I was like to Marianne, come with me. We want to see women in the front. Don't be shy.
Yeah. I want to.
I use Marianne to get the stress down. She's so good for that. In the most stressful situation, if you have a Marianne with you in your life, it will be easier.
Chill vibes. Yeah, okay. Well, I want to talk more about your guys' friendship, because we spoke about you when she was on the podcast. And so I'd love to have you also share some stories about Marianne, if you don't mind, but we'll get to that in a sec. Let's talk about the race. Obviously, this is what a lot of people are going to want to hear you speak about. I don't know if there's anything from the beginning that you think is interesting to touch on. It seems like maybe you raced in the similar style that Greg Valet advised you to do in 2021.
I think the most interesting starts in Chapure, or maybe when I get to Killian.
Let's start in Courmayeur, because I think this is I don't know, maybe a common theme from your two podium performances. It seemed to me, as somebody who's sort of been doing the commentary and just generally observing the race, and who likes to kind of analyze the strategies of various athletes, that for you, both years, the section between Courmayeur and the Grand Col Ferret, you've passed a lot of people and put yourself in great position to ultimately get on the podium. I'm wondering if it's something that you do to manage your race intelligently in the first half, or what do you think has set you up to excel so much leaving Courmayeur in the middle of the night?
Yeah, I think it's because I managed the race up to Courmayeur. I try to control my intensity. I try to control my time, and I'm agree with myself before the race. I visualize that when I arrive in Les Houches, all together with the elite athletes, when they start to push in the next uphill, I agree with myself to let them go and to don't see them anymore, because this is what I did last year, and it's difficult for an elite athlete to don't control in front. But when you are agree with that and when you have visualized that, it's easier. So this is something that worked very well last year, and this is something I wanted to do again this year with more ambitious time. But this is what I tried to do. And yeah, it's weird because I did the same strategy, try to manage the time up to Courmayeur and then go with the feeling. But when I arrived in Courmayeur, actually I stopped to watch on my splits from Les Chapieux, so from 50K to Courmayeur 80K, so for 30K. And yeah, I arrived in Courmayeur 30 minutes before the time I targeted. So
everybody was so much faster.
Yeah.
It's
so
crazy.
The first reaction, I said to myself, okay, first it's my watch that had a problem, but Alex, my assistant, confirmed to me that I had the 30 minutes ahead of my goal. So the first reaction I had was fear. I said to myself, I went way too fast. I made a big mistake, and I'm gonna crash. But I felt so good at this time that I continued without asking myself too many questions. And yeah, at this time I was fifth in the race. And the next section is the section I loved the most, from Berton to Arnouvaz. This 10K really flat. I managed to run really fast each time I'm on this place, and this is why I caught up on Tom Evans and Zach Miller. But I arrived so fast behind them, and yeah, this is where I passed third in the race. And as in Courmayeur, when I passed third, I said to myself, "Wow, Matt, you are before 100K mark. It's too early in the race to be in this position, because I don't have this confidence to be in this place at this time." So just behind Kilian and Jim, Matt, I went too fast and I'm sure I'm going to crash. So I told exactly the same that in Courmayeur. But again, I felt so good that I stopped questioning myself and I continued.
Yeah. Well, I was here actually in my studio doing the English commentary when you came through Courmayeur, and you were the only person who didn't sit down in the Courmayeur aid station. And you could sort of sense that your presence was similar to 2021, where you could kind of feel that you were on a special one that day. So moving a little bit further down the course, once you got over the top of the Grand Col Ferret, like you mentioned, you had only the greats, Jim Walmsley and Killian Journee ahead of you.
Only.
Yeah. And it wasn't long until you came up behind Killian Journee, the greatest mountain runner of all time. And it seems like you caught him around La Foulie. So bring us into that moment and tell us what was going through your mind.
Yeah, I catch up with Kilian super quickly between La Foulie and Champé. Actually, you know, this section which is pretty downhill and flat, and I arrived so fast behind him that I had the feeling that he stopped actually. And a few minutes before I catch to him, I learned that he has decided to stop in Champé. So at that moment, I had two choices. I arrived behind him, and as the first choice was to overtake him very fast to give him the final knockout, you know, the knockout blow.
Yeah, the knockout punch,
Yeah, exactly, the knockout punch. And the second choice was to stop next to him and chat with him. And and try to re-motivate him. And this is the second choice I did. This is this choice I made. Yeah, because then many people asked me if I had to do it again. Would you like to do it again? I'm like, for sure, I will do exactly the same again. You know, Killian, he's an idol for me. You know, it's thanks to him that I was inspired in this sport by seeing his movies with the Summit of My Life. And the first book I read, it's the book of Killian. So it was a huge chance for me that I had to be able to run alongside with him for 50K and even to fight with him for the victory. So for sure, I prefer to finish second in the UTMB, having experienced this story, rather than finish first on my own, alone, without this story. So this is why I did this choice. And
wow.
After the discussion, we worked together, and he stayed behind me, and I remotivate him, and we worked together to catch on Jim and then to fight. And it was a crazy scenario for me.
Can you also bring us into the moment where you guys overtook Jim? I'm sure you could tell that he was suffering, but I'm sure in your head, you're thinking, okay, it's now a battle between myself, Mathieu Blanchard, who just a few years ago was an engineer and a scuba diving instructor, battling against the great Spanish icon, Killian.
Yeah. First, when we get out of Champé aid station, Killian decided few minutes before to stop in Champé, and he started with me after Champé. So when he started with me, like I asked him, so Killian, finally you don't stop, you continue? And he said, okay, yeah, I'm good. You helped me, and now I understand that actually what happened to Killian, it was more mentally than physically. Jim pushed so hard in the Grand Col Ferret uphill, and Killian thought that the problem came from him, from Killian. It was not physically able to catch on Jim, but the problem was not Killian. The problem was Jim, who was pushing too hard sometimes. And when he understand it, he was like, okay, now I understand that I'm good, I'm feeling good, and my level with how I feel now, I could go to the win, and I will catch on Jim. So after this discussion, we decided to work together to catch on Jim, and we catch him very fast after Champé on the next uphill, and he was walking so slow in the uphill, and it was really hard to saw him like that. But he was so slow that I didn't have the same choices with Killian, because Killian was running when I catch on him, but Jim was so slow that I was like, okay, I can't help him. I will give you a good word to encourage him, but I can't do anything for him. So we passed him, and it was very fun, because then we were together with Killian, and I was like, okay, I will ask to Killian what we will do now. So I asked him, okay, Killian, so now we have catch Jim. So what we do now? And he told me, I think this is now the race is beginning. And I was like, man, it's a little bit late to start the race. It's 140K. It's crazy, but this is what we did.
A half marathon to the finish.
Yeah, and it was crazy, because the balance between our strengths was perfect. He had the advantage on the climb, and I had the advantage on the downhill, and it was the exact balance. It took me 4 minutes on this uphill after Champé, and I took him 4 minutes on the next downhill to Trian. So we were on the perfect balance. And this scenario, it's impossible. If you want to do it again, it's like impossible. So it was just perfect for a show and for a race, and this is what continue on the rest of the race.
Yeah, man, it's so great to hear you talk about this, and just the good-natured sportsmanship that's occurring, battling for the podium in the world's most important race, not only between you and Killian, but also between you and Killian and Jim Walmsley as you passed him. And a big kudos to Jim, who valiantly kept charging forward to secure a great fourth place performance this year.
Yeah, because he was so destroyed at this time. I told myself that it will be impossible. He will reach the finish line, but he was able to do it. And kudos for it.
Yeah, fantastic. And he's getting closer and closer to figuring that course out. And we all have faith that one day he'll knock it out of the park. But fast forwarding to Valorsine, I mean, for me as a fan of the sport and an observer, it's pretty remarkable to see the lead two men coming into the final major aid station together, 140, 150K into the UTMB. And it seemed like out of Valorsine was where Killian tried to gain the separation and ultimately was able to gain the separation on you to secure his fourth victory at UTMB. Can you also bring us into this moment?
Yeah, sure.
Through Valorsine and the separation as it occurred?
As I was really faster than him in the downhill, for sure, everything was going to be decided from the last aid station in Valorsine to the finish line. And, I try to optimize a lot the aid station. And I think I have the best time, the record cumulative time in the aid station. It's 11 minutes in this UTMB for me.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Cumulative 11 minutes.
Yeah, it's a 16 minutes for Killian and it's 25 for Jim. So this is something, the advantage I try to take in each aid station. But, Killian knows how to use his brain and he's so intelligent and so smart. And he knew my my little game and he saw it from Trian and Champé. And I knew that in Valorsine he won't stop too much. And it was very fun because when we arrived in Valorsine, we were looking eye contact. We didn't stop, and it was like a Western movie. The good, the ugly, and the bad, like who will be shot the first. And we were itching together, looking in the eyes, and we stopped 30 seconds and we get out from Valorsine. And he knew that he was stronger than me in the climbs, and this is where he had to push. And you know what? I don't think I lost the race in the last real climb. I mean, from the Col des Montés, the place where you cross the road to Tête-au-Vent, the big steep uphill. It's not there that I lost the race. It was before, actually. I lost the race in the last 4K that separates Valorsine to Col des Montés.
Yeah, it's kind of very gradual. Very gradual climbing along the river.
It's pretty flat climb, and Killian pushed so hard here after Valorsine that I thought, and I told to myself, he's crazy. He's crazy. He's going too fast. He's giving too much, and he's going to explode. And if I follow him, I'm going to explode myself, and we will both don't finish the race. Yeah. But when I remember this time, I still had enough energy to keep on him. Not at this pace, but for sure I should have given a little bit more, because it's crazy how much time he put on me on this section. And if I remember well, it took me 4 minutes on 4K. It's like 1 minute per K. It's too much. Because then I took him 5 minutes on the last downhill on him, and it took me 5 minutes. I was going to
say, it was like he had I think 8 minutes on you at the Flagère, and then you finished, I think, 4 and
4 minutes. So, and these 4 minutes are exactly there. So next time I should be more. Next time I should be more confident. But it's exactly there. I lost the race from Valorsine to Col des Montés road because I wasn't enough confident to follow him.
Well, I mean, losing the race is one way to put it, but also, Matt.
But I didn't lose anything, Dylan. As I said before, I'm so happy with the scenario, and I would like to do it again to finish second and fighting with Killian for 50K. I do it again, no problem.
So was it surreal for you to arrive at the finish line under 20 hours, arriving only 4 minutes behind Killian? Yeah. And maybe if there's anything you want to share between the interactions that you and Killian had at the finish line or afterwards, I'm sure the audience would love to hear what your conversations were like.
Sure. First, let's talk about this sub 20 because it's crazy. This was clearly not the goal of at the start. The goal was to run 21 hour. I ran 1 hour, almost 1 hour, and more than 1 hour than the goal. So yeah, it was crazy. And the UTMB will celebrate its 20 years old anniversary next year, and all the greatest runners on the planet have taken part of this race, and no one has never managed to pass under 20. Even some like Pau try to do it out of the racing, optimizing all the parameters. But I told to myself that it's impossible to run under 20. So for sure, it was not a goal. And only a few meters after I starting the last downhill from La Flégère, a guy on the edge on my left, I remember on this deep road, told me, Mats, go all out. You will run under 20. And I was like, what he's speaking about? And I was trying to look on my watch, and I saw if you remember well, 19 hours and 20 minutes in the race. So I told to myself, so, okay, I have 40 minutes to go to the finish line. It's too short. It's very far. But at this moment, I said to myself, okay, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to give everything to see if it's possible. And when I got down to cross the first road, I looked at my watch again. And at that time, I was around 19 hours and 50 minutes, so less than 10 minutes to reach the finish line. And there I said to myself, okay, it's still super far from the end. And if I remember well, you still have to run along the river, then go on the right, and then enter the city, right, left, and all the crowds and everything. So now I told myself, okay, Mats, it's your only chance in your life. You must no regrets at the finish line that you didn't go fast enough. So I dropped my brain on the ground and I gave my all to sprint to the finish to try to go under 20. But finally, I did 19 and 45 minutes. So I still had 6 minutes to go slower, but I didn't want to regret it. And it was just crazy, but it was not the objective. So this is why I fall in the ground, because I was destroyed with this crazy sprint.
Oh my gosh.
For the last,
you could tell. You could tell that you were trying to get out every last possible ounce of energy out of yourself, and ended up with just such an incredible performance. So what about the interaction with Killian and afterwards?
He arrived. I was on the ground like dying, and he arrived above me and he told me, hey, Matt, it was an honor to run with you. And I was like, Kilian, are you kidding me? It was an honor for me to run with you, I'm just Matt. I'm nothing for you. So it's for me. It was an honor. And then he told me, this time we did under 20 hours. Even me, I wasn't sure it was possible. And it's thanks to you. And it was the secret actually. And it was the key to do it. Pau Capel tried to do it without optimizing maybe the weather and the day he do it, and the aid station and the pacing, and people who take the stuff for him to be more light. But the secret and the key was to run together and to push each other to do it, because when you do it, you transcend yourself. And it's impossible to do it mentally alone. When you arrive in Champé or Vallorcine or Trian, and when your crew tell you that you have 30 minutes, 1 hour in front of the other, you can push that much to do it. So it was the key, and this is the thing we discussed. And then he told me it was one of my best race in my career, in my life. And I told him, Kilian, for me, it was the best race of my life. And at the end, the last things I told him, Kilian, you are one of the biggest inspiration in my life, because I stopped my job for trail running, and I did trail running maybe because of you, because I read your book and your movies. And you know what, Kilian, now I'm writing a book about my story as a normal people who start running at close to 30 years old and become a pro runner. And this is a book I want to launch next year, and it will be an honor for me if you write the first pages of the book, the preface. I don't know how to say in English. And would you like to do it for me? And he told me, yes, Matt, I will do it.
Oh my gosh, the story keeps getting better, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's, I think, illustrative of everything that we love about the sport, that the greatest of all time, Killian, is humble enough to communicate to you that it was an honor to race with you. And for you to be inspired by Killian's example when you were just finding the sport, and then to be at the level where you were competing with him every step of the way, and to put together one of the greatest performances in trail running history. It's a phenomenal story, and I can't wait to read your book. So going back to the conversation about your friend Marianne Hogan, I asked her about this on my podcast with her, to just reflect on the fact that you guys were both able to put together great second place finishes at the world's most important 100-mile race, both sort of coming from Montreal. And it seems like both sort of entering the sport at a similar time and meeting at that Solomon camp that you described earlier. Anything you want to say about your friend Marianne, or the conversations that you've had in the aftermath of UTMB?
So first, I just go a little bit before, I first met Marianne at the Salomon Academy in 2019. And since, she has become my best friend and my best running partner. And I know for me, I known for a long time that she has the potential to be clearly the best ultra trail runner in the world. And I'm sure soon she will be able to enter the top 10 or even the top 5 overall, like Courtney do in some races among the boys, and on the most prestigious ultra in the world. But like me, with the 2019 and 2020 years I told you before, I had to be patient she had to be patient between her injuries and the pandemic. And for me, it was only 2 years, but for her, it was 4 years since she got the first injury. And I'm super excited to see the rest of her stories the next year and everything, because I think we will continue to go on the same races, because we are a team as well. We help each other. I help her with more specific and engineering way I put in the sports, and she's more an artist, smiling and going with the flow. And it's a really good balance together to manage the stress and mentally and everything. So I think we continue to work together. And on this start line, we were not ready with this target, but it's very nice, because I saw a picture somewhere where we are like that with the fingers, with the two fingers together. And it's like we are saying before the race, we will finish too. It's really nice. And
I bet the Montreal.
It's an example that's running is something with a team, and we can work together to motivate each other.
Yeah, I bet the Montreal running community was absolutely out of their minds watching the race. And I'm sure it's been fun to celebrate together after the fact. So maybe last question for you here, Mathieu, before I let you go. I appreciate you taking so much time. I would be remiss not to corner you into talking about Western States now. Of course, I'm on the board of the Western States 100, the only 100-mile race in the world that compares to UTMB in terms of its stature and importance is the Western States 100. You earned a golden ticket to the race at UTMB. I'm wondering how you're thinking about your potential to maybe come race here in the United States of America, because we would love to have you.
Yeah, you know what? From the beginning, when I saw all the parameters of all the big races I wanted to do in my life, so it was Western State, Hard Rock, UTMB, and Diagonal des Fous. I went first on UTMB because it was easier. But when I see the parameters, my strengths at the beginning in trail running was running fast on the flats was running fast in the downhill. I'm really, really fast on the downhill. And my capacity to manage the heat is really, really good because I didn't tell you the story, but I grew up in the Caribbean islands in the tropical environment. And I feel very good when it's super, super, super hot. So for sure, when I see the parameters of Western States, this is my race. But, you know, I want to do a smart season now, thinking about some, A race. And I don't want to go mainly with opportunities and hurt choice. But for sure, I want to run a Western State. But I'm not sure I will run Western State and UTMB the same year. It will be a combo, maybe Western State plus Diagonale des Fous, or Hard Rock plus Diagonale des Fous, or UTMB alone with other races like Lavaredo before.
Yep.
But for next year, I don't know. Maybe it will be the year to jump from UTMB to try something else and to go back at UTMB in 2024. But for sure, I got my golden ticket to Western States at UTMB. It's an opportunity to go there. And I'm thinking of it. I'm not sure now, but I didn't yet confirm my 2023 calendar, but this is something I want to do, and this is something I consider seriously because Marianne Hogan is going there for sure. Yeah. And as I told before, when we are together, we perform. So well, I don't. Yeah.
If there's anything I can do to persuade you, I would be more than happy to, because we would absolutely love to have you at Western States.
And there is something that's happening next year that I will spend 2 weeks in Kenya in March for a special camp. And then I would like to run another road marathon because it's since 2016 I didn't run marathon. Yeah. And it's right after Kenya, the Paris marathon. So if I spend my winter on the track in Montreal, then I go in Kenya for 2 weeks doing huge millage, running fast on the ground and with altitude and maybe with heat in Africa, and then going to Africa and to Paris for the marathon. And right after Paris, if I go in the US around the Western State area, training for 2 months just for heat, it could be a good plan.
It could be a good plan. Yeah. Well, Matt, congratulations on another fantastic podium performance at UTMB. Thank you for coming on the podcast to tell the whole story. I'm really looking forward to sharing the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. And is it possible to ask you a question?
Sure.
Which races we will run together next year?
Let's do it. I mean, okay, so I'm starting to feel like an athlete again. I'm actually going to do Ultra Pyrenees here in a couple of weeks. And then I'm planning to do the UTMB Thailand race at the end of this year in hopes that I'll punch a ticket to UTMB Mont Blanc next year. I really think that UTMB is, a race that I know I could do better at. I finished 7th in 2017. It feels like the race that got away from me in my career. And I really want to go back and have one more really big crack at UTMB. So that's my goal for next year, is to hopefully be on the start line, maybe next to you at UTMB. If not, maybe we'll do Diagonale des Fous afterwards.
Yeah, UTMB is a long-term project. I don't know if I will run it next year, but for sure I will be there to run with you or to cheers you.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you, Dylan.